On May 8, 2026, the United States government did something it had never done before. It officially released classified files on UFOs, and inside those files, the Pentagon made a statement that should have stopped the world. It said, and this is a direct quote from the official release, that these are unresolved cases, meaning the government is, in their own words, unable to make a definitive determination on the nature of the observed phenomena. In other words, the most powerful military organization on Earth looked at what its own pilots and sensors recorded, and officially admitted it has no explanation. But here's the part nobody is talking about loudly enough. The scientists who were supposed to study this were only allowed to see a fraction of what actually exists. And the people who have seen the rest have been threatened into silence. This is not a theory. This is documented, testified, confirmed on the record in front of the United States Congress. So the real question is not whether something is being hidden, the question is why. And the answer, when you actually follow the evidence, is more complicated and more disturbing than most people are prepared for. Let's start with how the system actually works, because understanding the structure is what makes everything else fall into place. When NASA formed its official UAP independent study team to investigate unidentified aerial phenomena, the public assumed these were top scientists with full access to everything the government had collected. They were not. The scientists on that team, including NASA's own researchers and university professors from some of the most respected institutions in the country, were given access only to unclassified data. The classified files, the military sensor recordings, the radar data from restricted airspace, the detailed incident reports from combat pilots, none of that was on the table. NASA scientist Federica Bianco, who served on that very panel, confirmed this publicly, saying she had not seen anything that indicated violations of the laws of physics, but critically, she was only reviewing what she was permitted to see. The study was designed, intentionally or not, to reach conclusions limited by the boundaries of what it was allowed to examine. And here is why that boundary exists, and why it is almost impossible to remove without causing a completely separate problem. The equipment the military uses to detect and track UAPs is among the most classified technology the United States operates. The sensors, the satellites, the radar systems, the signal intelligence infrastructure, all of it is classified at levels that most scientists and most government officials do not have clearance to access. So when a pilot reports something moving at speeds and in patterns that no known aircraft can match, the recording of that incident is inseparable from the classified platform that recorded it. Releasing the observation means revealing the capability, and revealing the capability is something the intelligence community considers an existential national security risk, because adversaries who know what you can see also know how to hide from it. This is the trap at the center of this entire conversation. The evidence and the secrecy are not separate things, they are fused together, and you cannot have one without the other. But that explains institutional silence. It does not explain what happened to the people who tried to speak anyway. In 2023, a man named David Grusch sat before the United States Congress and said things that, if true, change everything we think we know about this subject. Grusch was not a fringe figure, not a UFO enthusiast with a blog, not someone making claims from the outside. He was a former United States Air Force officer and decorated intelligence official who served on the Pentagon's own Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, under oath, in front of elected representatives of the American people. He testified that the U.S. government has been running a secret multi-decade program to recover and reverse engineer craft of non-human origin. He said that so-called non-human biologics, materials recovered from these craft, exist and have been studied within classified programs. And then he said something that took the entire hearing to a different level entirely. He confirmed, when directly asked by a congressman, that he was aware of people who had been threatened, and people who had been harmed, specifically to keep this information from becoming public. What happened after that testimony is almost as revealing as the testimony itself. Congress asked to speak with Grusch inside a classified facility, ASCIF, where sensitive information could be discussed freely. Officials then informed lawmakers that Grusch did not currently have the security clearance required to discuss those issues in that setting. His clearance had effectively been cut off. Sean Kirkpatrick, the first director of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the very office created to investigate UAPs, wrote publicly that Grusch had refused to speak with his organization, which Grusch and his supporters dispute, saying the opposite was true. Two versions of events, one set of classified files, and the public with no way to independently verify which account is accurate, because the records that would settle the question are themselves classified. What makes this impossible to simply dismiss is who started speaking up around Grusch, not just one person. 34 senior military, government, and intelligence officials have now officially broken their silence on the record. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer publicly stated that multiple credible sources had alleged a constitutional crisis over UFOs. Senator Mike Rounds called these individuals brilliant people who are not making this up. Secretary of State Marco Rubio described the whistleblowers as people with very high clearances and high positions within the government. Senator Mitch McConnell called them sane and credible. These are not people known for entertaining conspiracy theories. These are some of the most senior figures in American politics, and they are saying on the record that something real is being concealed. The reason more people have not come forward, according to those same lawmakers, is that doing so means breaking a non-disclosure agreement, which exposes a person to federal prosecution, career destruction, and based on Grusch's testimony, potentially something far worse. Congress has been actively pushing for immunity protections for anyone willing to testify, specifically because without that protection, the personal risk is simply too great for most people to take. Now go back further, before Grusch, before congressional hearings, to the people who were there from the very beginning, the astronauts. On the Apollo 11 mission, the first time human beings ever landed on the moon, astronaut Buzz Aldrin reported observing a very large, unexplained object outside the capsule during the journey. On Apollo 12, astronauts Alan Bean and Pete Conrad documented and photographed unexplained phenomena above the lunar horizon, describing particles, illuminated debris, and flashing streaks behaving in ways they could not explain. These accounts were never formally denied by NASA, they were simply filed away. And according to one UAP researcher given access to Pentagon document releases this year, the Apollo 17 mission in 1972 produced astronaut accounts of UAP observations during 3 separate periods, details that were sitting in classified archives for over 50 years before being partially released in May 2026, as part of the government's new disclosure effort. And there is a document that almost nobody talks about, one that has been publicly available for years, sitting on the official website of the National Security Agency. It is a declassified internal document titled Communication with Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Inside that document, written by the NSA itself, is a line that should give anyone pause. It states that the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence is taken for granted by most scientists, not speculated about, not considered possible. Taken for granted, this is not a leaked document, not a whistleblower claim, not a piece of disputed testimony. It is a declassified, publicly accessible NSA document, and almost no one has read it. So what did the May 2026 file release actually show? The Trump administration launched something called the Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP Encounters, PURSUE, and released nearly 200 previously classified files. Inside were military reports, censored data, witness accounts from pilots and service members describing objects moving in ways they could not explain, and sightings of glowing and metallic objects near military training zones. NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, reviewing the materials, said the release was surfacing real unexplained phenomena captured by military sensors, while clarifying there was nothing in what he was personally aware of in terms of alien bodies or crashed ships. That qualifier matters. What he was personally aware of, the same structure of limited access, the same boundary between what officials are shown and what exists in the deepest classification levels, was still intact even in this supposedly historic disclosure. Critics of all of this point out, reasonably, that there is still no physical, publicly verifiable evidence on the table, no material that has been independently analyzed, no craft sitting in a hangar that journalists can photograph. Sean Kirkpatrick, who spent years running the Pentagon's official UAP investigation, wrote that the claims of government cover-ups derive from misunderstandings and speculation rather than evidence. He believes the probability that extraterrestrial intelligent life is here is, in his words, little to none. And a 2024 official government review found no verifiable evidence that the U.S. government possesses extraterrestrial technology or operates hidden reverse engineering programs. These are serious credentialed people making a serious counterargument, and it cannot simply be waved away. But here is the problem with accepting that conclusion and moving on. The same system that would generate the evidence to prove a cover-up is the system doing the covering. The classified programs that Grusch and others allege exist are, by design, invisible to the oversight bodies that would confirm or deny them. Congressional investigators have explicitly accused federal agencies of withholding specific records and videos they know exist. Lawmakers have said on the record that agencies and defense contractors know that Congress knows these files are there, and have still not produced them. That is not a gap in the evidence. That is a wall built around it. And the people with the keys to open that wall are currently asking for immunity before they will turn them. So here is where this leaves everything. An official government document release has confirmed unexplained phenomena that the Pentagon itself cannot identify. 34 senior officials have broken silence. A decorated intelligence officer testified under oath about recovered craft and recovered biological material, and people harmed to keep it quiet. Apollo astronauts recorded incidents that stayed buried for 50 years, and NASA's own scientists were handed an incomplete picture and asked to investigate whether the full truth is something as staggering as what Grusch described, or something more complicated and less dramatic. One thing is no longer a matter of debate. Scientists at NASA are not allowed to talk about certain things, and the reason they are not allowed is now, finally, the subject of a fight happening in public, in Congress, in courtrooms, and in classified briefings rooms, where the rest of the world is still not permitted to listen. The question is not whether there is something behind the wall. The question is how long that wall is going to hold.